not to get any more complicated, I'm sorry, but the reason they're pushing a lot of these cuts into next year is because you can spread they have to spread the the 200 million and possibly the additional 300 million on top of that over 4 months.
Right.
Whereas they can spread the 800 million or more over the entire year, and they also have a better picture of what the stimulus will allow. So it seems, on its surface, seems a little short-sighted to say we're going to spend a lot of the cushion in the first year of this, but there was some logic to that, to doing it.
And one of the big pieces is one you mentioned at the end there, Wade, is the stimulus dollars. There will be, this blow will be cushioned. The blow initially in 9 and 10 will be cushioned, but we just get to feel the effect of it in 11, 12 if we don't fix Arveschoug. Because when those federal dollars go away, we now, even though we haven't felt the effect of that 15% reduction in 09 and 10 because we've been able to manage our way through it, come 2011, there's no more managing your way through it. We've spent all of our one-time reserves, and it doesn't make any difference because one-time money doesn't solve the problem because you're back at that lower red line again. Like I said, we have other problems in the fiscal situation in Colorado that maybe in another day we can talk about those. But the most immediate one, I think, is this notion of trying to prepare ourselves so that we don't extend the pain for families in Colorado, that we don't extend artificially the length of the recession by keeping in place a rule that doesn't have to be there. It is a rule of internal discipline that the legislature has chosen not to change over time, and I'm not really sure why. I mean, I could speculate, but I'm not sure why. Yes, ma'am.
It seems like a lot of extra dollars then have gone to transportation. Is that right?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And I can't completely agree with the statement that they're extra dollars.
What?
There has been, and not because your analysis is absolutely right. We've moved a lot of general fund money out of funding what are typically called general fund priorities into transportation, which is usually not considered a general fund priority, but it's a capital issue. I can't say, however, they didn't need the money too. Because quite frankly, we haven't raised the gas tax since 1988. The purchasing power of our gasoline tax contribution has fallen so dramatically, we've lost 60% of the purchasing power of our gasoline tax. So we have real, legitimate, terrible issues on the transportation side of the ledger as well. But I want to point out one statistic that just absolutely sat me down in my seat. I'm used to looking at bad numbers when it comes to Colorado in comparison to other states. That happens on a pretty regular basis. But a lot of people blame the problems in Colorado's financing situation right now on Amendment 23. Have you ever heard that Amendment 23 is the problem because we spend all the money on K-12, and if we didn't have that, we would be in great shape? I recently saw the statistics about where we are in the national ranking compared to our ranking of spending per pupil in Colorado. When we adopted Amendment 23, we as the people adopted Amendment 23 in 2000, we were $696 below the national average spending per pupil. Guess where we are now? $1,449 below the national average. We aren't keeping up with our economic development competitors in an environment where overspending on K-12 is blamed for the problems that we have. So we've got huge challenges in funding K-12. We have huge challenges in funding transportation. We have huge challenges in funding our Medicaid and our healthcare system, and on and on and on and on. And unfortunately, Arveschoug doesn't increase the amount of money available. It doesn't make the pie any bigger. What it does is it allows the legislature to look at the whole pie and make the priorities of transportation versus kids. And the other thing I haven't talked about at all is spending versus saving. Because right now, the situation, the statutory provisions require that we spend every dollar that we get. Any money that comes in that the legislature doesn't appropriate automatically gets spent 2/3 on transportation, 1/3 on roads. So for a state that considers ourselves so fiscally conservative, we have a statutory structure in place that requires us to spend money. So, long answer to a short question, yes, we've moved a lot of money into transportation, money that could have been used in other areas. My only problem with that, with the reason I felt like I had to add to that is that we have huge transportation needs as well as transportation, or needs in other areas.
So Carol, what's the hopeful part?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I was supposed to give you something other than gloom and doom, wasn't I? Today at 2 o'clock, the Senate Finance Committee is going to be hearing a bill, Senate Bill 228, which has been introduced by Senator John Morris from Colorado Springs, and co-sponsor in the House is Representative Don Marostica from Longmont. That would repeal the 6% limit. That would take away the automatic transfers to transportation and capital construction and make it fair and create a level playing field as we leave this recession and money starts to come back and allow the General Assembly to make those decisions. We're pretty confident the majority caucus is behind the bill in the Senate. I hate to say things like this, but we're relatively optimistic that it'll come out of the Senate. We remain optimistic it will come out of the House as well. It is not coming out with the kind of bipartisan support that we had hoped to see as we address these as the state confronts and addresses these kinds of problems. And we're hoping that there are some other things that can be done in terms of some possibility of creating savings accounts somewhere else, or to create additional sources of revenue for transportation that might make it more palatable to a broader group of people. The other thing that's hopeful in all of this is there's a bill moving through the legislature now, Senate Bill 108. It's called the FASTER bill. It is the only thing on the table right now that actually increases the size of the pie. It's relatively controversial because anytime you raise more money, it's controversial. But it's a bill that would actually increase the fees that you pay when you register your vehicle. And that money would be used to build roads and do road safety and bridge safety over the next 10 or 12 years. It raises about $250 million. Those two things, I think, start to get us in a better place, because as we move this automatic transfer of road money away from transportation, we now have replaced it with an additional, with a source of money someplace else. And so it is not just cutting Peter to pay Paul, because, or robbing from Peter to pay Paul, because that's what we've been doing in the past. We now have a package of things where we actually have resources for transportation, as well as have a more level playing field for everything else.
I'd like to ask a question. I'm not sure I state it exactly, but there seems to be two very compelling issues on the table. One, obviously, is the financial realities that you very articulately laid out. Thank you so much. The second one, though, is governance issue. And it's interesting to me that there may be a struggle in getting this passed, why wouldn't senators and representatives want to be accountable for representative government? They can't even represent the constituents because they don't have the ability to make those decisions. Is that argument for governance used as strongly as it could, or are people just afraid of money?
I'd love to have you just make, if I got that on tape, can I get that? Because
Just take her with you
Yeah.
to the Hill this afternoon.
I'd love to, the invitation is open. Anybody who wants to come 2 o'clock this afternoon, we'd love to put you on the agenda.